So, good afternoon, everyone. So, now let's talk about stylistics, speech acts, and I'm our politeness duty. So, these are the ways to study how we use language in communication. Stylistics, it is the study of how language is used in writing, particularly in literature, and how that language reflects and shapes our understanding of human experiences. And historically speaking, stylistics focus on analyzing the style of writing to help identify an author by looking closely at an author's choice of words, sentence structures, and other language features. Researchers could determine who wrote a piece of the literature. So, in today also, stylistics goes beyond authorships and looks at how the style of writing helps shape the reader's understanding of different elements in a story. It also examines how an author's language choices influence our perception of, like the characters, which is how the way uh, characters speak or are described tells us about their personalities, motives, or relationship. And also themes, which is a certain language pattern that highlight the main ideas or messages of the story, like love, conflict, or identity. And lastly is the plot development. It is how the language creates suspense, builds tension, or signals important turning points in the narrative. Next is language as a tool for characterizations. So this means that using the way characters speak to show who they are and how they relate to others. So this is how we can understand characters through their language. First is we have the direct and indirect speech. When we say direct speech, it is when a character says something clearly, like let's say, uh, if the character don't like the other character, or by simply saying I don't like you, this shows uh, they are straightforward or being honest. And when we say indirect speech, it is when a character hints at something instead of saying it directly. Like, for example, I'm not sure about this. So, this might show that they are more careful, polite, or trying to avoid conflict. Second is politeness versus impoliteness. So when we say politeness, it is when a character uses respectful language like please or thank you. And this can show that they are kind, considerate, or have a care for others. And impolite, on the other side, it is when a character uses rude or harsh language. It might show that they are aggressive, rude, or don't care about social rules. And lastly, face threatening behavior. So this happens when a character says or does something that embarrasses or insults someone else. For example, of for example is interrupting someone or calling them names. This can show that uh, the character is rude, confrontational, or has a power over others. Next is pragmatics. It is a study of how we use language in real life situations, beyond just the word we say. It looks at the social aspects of communication, such as how language help us interact with others, manage relationships, and show our identity. So the pragmatics more focus on speech acts, face, and politeness and impoliteness. So in speech acts, these are the actions performed through speaking. Like for example, we have here the threat and request. In a threat, for example, if you don't stop, I will tell everyone. So it is an attempt to influence someone's behavior. On the other hand, request is, for example, can you please, something like that, is asking for something. So basically, the pragmatics and speech acts helps us to understand how these speech acts shape communication and influence social interactions. Next is speech acts of threatening. So a threat, it is when a character says something to make other person feel scared or worried, or often to get them to do something or stop doing something. So threatening works in a story like, for example, reveals the character's trait. When a character threatens someone, it shows us a lot about who they are. So speech acts apply to all dialogue, while the threats are just one example of speech acts. Speech acts also apply to all types of speech in a story. Characters can also ask for something, make a promise, apologize, complain, and accuse, or by blaming someone for something. So in simple terms, when characters make threats, it shows their personality and make the story more exciting. And all kinds of speech, such as the requests, promises, apologies, and etc., help us understand the characters and how the plot unfolds. So speech acts in drama. So in drama, the way characters speak or what they say and how they say it, it is really important for how we understand them and the story. So here's how the character's speech works in drama. So first, in character language shows us who they are. So it is all about what a character says and how they say it helps us to understand who they are. Tone, how they say it, word of choice, and whether they speak formally or casually to tell us about the character's personality and role in the story. So in a play, what characters say and how they say it is a key to understanding them and the story. Speech act theory also help us break down their dialogue and see what their words really mean and how they push the plot forward. Next is types of speech acts. So this can be divided into two, which is the consitives and formatives. This describe different ways language is used to convey meaning or perform actions. So first is let's talk about constatives. So first is constatives. So these are the statements that describe something about the world or a situation. They can be true or false based on whether what's being said matches reality. Let's just say, for example, I like red wine. This is a statement about the speaker's preference. It can be true if the speaker likes red wine or false if they do not. So, constatives are used to provide information or describe facts. They don't do anything other than share details or opinions. On the other hand, formatives, these are statements that perform an action through speech. These do not describe a state of affairs, instead, they change the world or make something happen simply by being said. Let's say, for example, I now pronounce you man and wife. When said by someone with authority, like a priest or officiant, This statement doesn't just describe a fact, it creates a new reality, which is the marriage. It cannot be true or false in the traditional sense because it's a power that depends on the context and authority of the speaker. Next is felicitous conditions for speech acts. This refers to the specific conditions that must be met for affirmative speech acts such as a marriage pronouncement to be successful or effective. If these conditions are not met, the speech act may fail or not have the intent effect. The significance of speech acts in characterizations. This refers to how the way characters speak, what they say, how they say it, and the context in which they speak reveals important aspects of their personality, motivations, and relationships with others in the story. A speech act is any verbal action that a character performs through speech, such as making a statement, asking a question, giving a command, making a promise, or issuing a threat. The way a character uses these speech acts can give us crucial insight into their inner world. In a context of execution of speech acts, this is all about who says what, or the identity of the speaker and the words they choose are central to understanding their character. In the types of speech acts, it is the specific kind of speech acts used, whether it is a promise, offer, threat, request, and etc., which can reveal the character's intentions, desires, and how they approach power or influence. So, speech acts a character performs are not just tools for moving the plot forward. They are integral to shaping how we understand that character by paying attention to who speaks, when they speak, and what speech act they use. We gain insight to their inner world, personality, and relationships. The speech acts help us interpret how characters view themselves, how they want to be perceived, and how they interact with others, which makes them a powerful tool for characterization. Next is beyond constitutives and formatives. So, as what I've said earlier, that the constitutive, it is all about the statement that describes something, like saying I like red wine, which can be true or false. And the formatives are the action done through speaking. For example, as what I've said, that I promise to, which saying the words is an action itself. So by looking at the different ways characters use speech, we can better understand their personality, goals, and how they relate to others.
And today I'm going to discuss the different types of speech acts and some concepts related to how they work in communication. Speech acts are essentially the actions we perform through language, like making requests, giving commands, or expressing feelings. So let's break down some types of speech acts and a few key concepts that will help us understand them better. So here's are the 6 main types of speech acts. Number 1 is representatives. Speech acts where the speaker expresses beliefs or describes how they perceive the world. So the function is communicates the speaker's understanding of reality. So representatives These are speech acts where the speaker expresses beliefs or describes their understanding of reality. For example, when someone says, I believe it will rain tomorrow. So, they are communicating their perception or beliefs. So, number two is assertives. So, assertives is a speech acts that commit the speaker to the truth of proposition or belief. So, assertives is a type of that involves committing to speaker to the truth of a statement or belief. They state facts or beliefs that the speaker holds to be true, such as saying the earth orbits the sun. So that's the example of assertives. So number three is directives. This is a speech acts that aim to get the hearer to do something they seek to influence the listener's behavior. So the function of this is requests, advice, commands, or threats where the speaker attempts to cause action. So when we say directives, this is a speech that aims to get the listener to do something, meaning they are attempt to influence someone's behavior. For example, please close the door. Number four is commissives. Speech acts in which the speaker commits to future actions. The functions is the speaker commits to a course of action in the future, often binding themselves to it. So when we say commissive, this involves the speaker committing themselves to a future action. Example of this, it includes promises and offers such as, I will help you with your homework tomorrow. Next is expressive. So expressive is a speech acts that express the speaker's emotion or attitudes toward a proposition or a situation. So function communicates the speaker's feelings or emotional reaction. So, expressive, this convey the speaker's emotion or attitudes toward a specific situation. For instance, saying like, I'm sorry for being late. So, it express regret. So number six, declarative. Speech acts that change the state of the world based on the preposition being expressed. So the function, these acts directly change the sociocultural reality when spoken in the right context. So when we say declaratives, these speech acts change the state of the world based on the statement being made. They directly alter the social or cultural reality in a particular context, such as in legal or ceremonial settings. Indirectness and implicitness in speech acts. So number one is speech acts complexity. Utterances do not always match their intended meaning. So when we say speech acts complexity, the words people say don't always match to the intended meaning. Just for example, saying it's a bit cold here could be an indirect request to close a window rather than just a comment about the temperature. So number two, Austin's tripartite model of speech acts. So locution, what is said; elocution, what is meant or intended meaning; prelocution, effect on the listener. So when we say locution, this is the literal act of saying something that the actual words or phrases are spoken. The focus here is on the content of the statement, its grammatical structure, and its literal meaning. So also, and in elocution, this is the intended function or purpose behind the words the speakers intended or meaning or goal. And we say prelocution, this is the effect the words have on the listener, the response or reaction of the listener has to what was said. Number three, direct versus indirect speech act. So, direct speech act is the literal meaning matches the intended meaning. So, for example, close the door. It is a directly request to the listener to close the door. While indirect speech act, the literal words don't directly match the intended meaning, such as it's getting noisy in here, which could imply a request to close the door. Number 4, Grice's cooperative principle. So, Grice's propose the effective communication generally follow these four maxims. So, quality, be truthful, don't provide false information. Next is quantity, give the right amount of information, don't over-explain or be too brief. Relation, be relevant, stay on topic. And last, manner, be clear and orderly, avoid ambiguity. And lastly, pragmatic inferencing. So, listeners often interpret meaning beyond what is explicitly said based on context and shared expectations. So, listeners often interpret meaning beyond what is explicitly said using context and shared understanding to infer the intended message. This skill helps people understand indirect or implied meanings in conversation. So, understanding these types of speech act and the role of indirectness help us interpret language more accurately and communicate effectively. Speech acts go beyond just words. They serve as tools for influencing others, expressing emotions, and even altering social realities. So, maxims of communication. These maxims are guidelines that people often follow to make conversations clear and cooperative. They were introduced by philosopher H.P. Grice as part of his cooperative principle. Maxim of quality emphasizes being truthful and providing adequate evidence. Speakers should not say anything false or that lacks of evidence. Maxim of quantity advises giving only the necessary amount of information, no more or no less. Avoiding over-explaining or being too brief ensures clarity. While maxim of relations stresses relevance, meaning that contributions should relate to the topic or conversation at hand. Maxim of manner promotes clarity, brevity, and order, meaning that speakers should avoid ambiguity and be straightforward. Sometimes a speaker might float or intentionally break these maxims, which can imply hiding meanings or create ambiguity. Face, politeness, and impoliteness. Face refers to self-worth, and politeness involves maintaining positive and negative face needs, approval, and autonomy. Impoliteness occurs when speakers intentionally threaten another's face. In the book of Ellie, the gang leader's aggressive language attacks Ellie's face, and Ellie responds with his own threat. Analyzing these interactions help understand character motivations and plot development. So, the face here is about a person's social self, respect, or dignity. People want to be treated in ways that make them feel valued. This is called positive face and respected for their independence. While politeness means talking to people in ways that respect their feelings and their need for freedom. For example, if we're polite, we'll try to be kind or respectful so they feel valued and free. Impoliteness happen when someone says something that makes the other person feel insulted or attack. In the movie The Book of Ellie, there's a scene where a gang leader uses rude and aggressive language toward Ellie, which is like attacking Ellie's face or sense of self-worth. Ellie responds by standing up for himself, showing that he won't back down. Looking at these moments help us understand why characters act the way they do and how the story unfolds as it shows the conflicts and power dynamic between them. Language as characterization tool. Culpepper 2001 explains that we understand characters through a mix of prior knowledge, what we expect based on stereotypes, and dialogue-driven evidence, what the character says and how they say it. Prior knowledge relies on cultural or social assumptions, while text-based is what a character says, and surface structure is how they say it. These help us refine our understanding of a character as their dialogue unfolds. Uh, to understand a character, we use a mix of what we already know about people, our expectations, and the way the characters speak in the story. So, prior knowledge is what we expect based on cultural or social assumptions. For example, if a character is a teacher, we might expect them to be knowledgeable or patient. Text-based is the actual words that characters says. These tell us what the character is directly communicating, while surface structure is how they say it, their tone, style, and expression. This can show us their attitude or personality. As the character continues to speak throughout the story, we combine these elements to get a clearer picture of who they are. This approach helps us understand the character's personality, motives, and relationship with others. Pragmatics and dialogue. In Taken, Brian Mills' threat to the kidnapper fails because the kidnapper doesn't believe he will act on it. This mismatch between Mills' intended threat top down and how the kidnapper interprets it bottom up creates a plot complication. Analyzing how character use speech acts, implicatures, and pragmatic phenomena reveals their motivation and drives the story forward. So, in the movie Taken by Brian Mills, threatens a kidnapper, but the threat doesn't work because the kidnapper doesn't believe Mills will actually do anything. This creates a misunderstanding. Mills is serious, but the kidnapper doesn't take him seriously. So, this situation shows two perspectives. So, top down, Mills has a clear intention with his threat. He plans to act on it. Bottom up, the kidnapper interprets it differently, thinking Mills won't follow through. This misunderstanding adds tension to the plot by analyzing these types of interactions, what people say, and how others interpret it. We can see characters through motives and understand how these misinterpretations drive the story forward, adding complexity to the plot. Thank you all for participating in today's discussion on the different types of speech acts. I hope you find it insightful and that it gives you a new perspective on how we use language in various ways. Remember, understanding these types of speech can help us communicate more effectively and interpret others' intention more clearly. Keep thinking about how these ideas show up in real life conversation. Thank you and goodbye.